what we focus on is security, so that people can invest in it and don't have to worry about the fact that tomorrow their investment might just be disappeared. We are really applying the most paranoid model you can think of. So this is our hardware wallet. It's called the Ngrave Zero. And so we came up with the idea by thinking first about what is actually wrong with all the existing solutions. So if you think about it, if you're not sitting in the same room as me, you cannot attack me anymore, which is of course incredibly secure. And that's, let's say, the remote attack vector. We remove that completely. And then we have a physical attack vector. So the device, we build it from scratch with one of the world leading R&D and innovation institutes on nanoelectronics. And so basically we built this from scratch with our experts to make sure that if somebody gets their hands on this device, on the Zero, and tries to open it up, the device will wipe itself. Your keys will be gone. And then obviously we have the second plate as a backup.
Welcome to Tech Post. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski. In this episode, I interview Ruben Merre. He's the CEO and founder of Ngrave. They're a hardware crypto wallet solution. And in this episode, we talk about how they've solved for most of the vulnerabilities of existing crypto hardware wallets and what it takes to generate secure private keys. This is an amazing episode if you're interested in learning more about cryptocurrency, so please stay tuned. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Ruben. Tell us a bit about who you are and what you're working on.
So hi, everybody. Hi, Trent. Yes, I'm Ruben, Ruben Merre, if I say it with an English accent. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ngrave. What we basically do, in a nutshell, is we remove the most important attack vectors of your blockchain wallet. So we have built a solution that is completely offline. If you think about hardware wallets, it's a completely offline hardware wallet. There are no online attack vectors anymore. We don't have any connection that we need, so we don't need USB, NFC, 4G, any kind of network capability. And that means that we actually effectively have taken away the whole online attack vector that comes into mind, and basically, which is the most important way that all crypto wallets today get hacked and compromised. And then the physical device itself, we build it together with world-leading experts in their fields, in nanoelectronics, in hardware security, in applied cryptography, to ensure that that device itself physically, because that's the last kind of attack vector that exists. If you attack it, if you try to open it up, if you try to pre-program it, the device has been tamper-proofed on many, many different layers to basically ultimately self-destruct and wipe your keys away. And that's only part one of our solution. So we're actually bringing out the first end-to-end solution to managing your private keys, to managing the access keys, the credentials, the private keys or the master seed to your cryptocurrency wallet. And we have thought about all the what ifs. So if you have the first what if, we should think about is what happens if I lose my device. Today's market gives you a piece of paper. We give you a cryptographic puzzle made of 2 stainless steel plates. Is deliberately done completely non-electronic because electronics can degrade. And the thing is, you need both plates to find the key back. It's quite an advanced cryptographic principle. Some people might compare it to Shamir secret sharing, but it's actually something different. The core morale there is that if you only have one plate, you have zero information on the key. So you still have to brute force the entire private key, which is basically impossible computationally with the computers we have today. And then the question becomes, what if I lose that backup? We also have a way of recovering those plates for you, but without any third-party risk. And we can even go as far as post-swim recovering those plates and getting them to your next of kin. And by doing that, we basically created a fully end-to-end solution, the first one of its kind. But I guess that's more about Ngrave than about me. So,
Hey, no, that's what you're working on. So, I mean, it's a fascinating concept what you're working on. I love the fact that you're trying to solve for all these use cases, because unfortunately, right now, when it comes to crypto wallets and hardware, it's a mess. I mean, you've got all these different devices, like you said, you're literally storing your private keys on a piece of paper. paper wallets in some cases. Now we've got no custody wallets, which just use like a QR code, which I can't even imagine how many potential security issues that can raise. Obviously, you probably don't want to, anyone who's listening, you probably don't want to store a lot of crypto in a non-custodial wallet. But, there's so many different vectors and challenges. And we've seen this with, people who have left a lot of their crypto in exchanges. They've been, they've had their cell phones hacked because, a lot of people enabled like two-step authentication. So we literally had the situation where people were like calling AT&T or Verizon and pretending to be the user and like spoofing their numbers and getting access to their phones and, switching their phone to a different device that, the hacker had access to. I mean, there's a lot of pitfalls with the existing security solutions when it comes to managing crypto securely. And then for a lot of companies, like that are in the blockchain space, they have to figure out like how they're going to exchange crypto. So in many cases, a lot of these companies have to essentially become an exchange themselves, or at least have some initial exchange functionality within their blockchain or their blockchain project. And then they now become vulnerable to all of these hacks. We've seen this number of blockchain companies since, kind of the 2017 boom there. And, there's been a number of people who have walked away with millions of dollars in crypto because, they just took that little piece of paper and that private key and millions of dollars of crypto were stored on one hardware wallet. And they disappear with that wallet and that's it.
I think a good example there is the Winklevoss brothers said it themselves not so long ago that they basically cut their piece of paper, their paper wallet in two, and then stored it to different places. Paper, as for one, it's the worst place where you can actually write down your key, because if you just spill a bit of water or coffee on it, you already lose all your bitcoins. So towards them, I would really say just have a look at our graphene solution. It's called Ngrave Graphene. And that's those two plates. So those two plates are made of stainless steel, and they can withstand a house fire, corrosion, water. You can basically put them in a vault and they will not pale, just like paper. They will not pale in the next 50 years. And the fact that there are two of them and you need both means that you can put them somewhere separate. And it's even harder to basically get your hands on somebody's bitcoins.
Well, and then let's talk about the actual device itself. So I love the concept of the two plates, and I mean, security implications of that are pretty obvious. But your device, your actual hardware device that's generating these wallets, that's storing, that's creating these private keys. Can you talk a bit about that and how it works?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess this is a podcast, right? So I can show this to you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I already did that, like one of our previous encounters, but so this is our hardware wallet. It's called the Ngrave Zero, and so we came up with the idea by thinking first about what is actually wrong with all the existing solutions, and we found a concept we call ourselves the box of Pandora for cryptocurrencies, and for us, opening the box of Pandora of crypto, it's the equivalent of setting up an online connection. Any kind of connection to a connected device also falls under that category. So if you look at incumbent hardware wallets, they either use USB, which is not only friction, but also not very safe. If people know about it, like the Fluxnet hacks a couple of years ago, where it basically very advanced and sophisticated hackers, they were able to replicate a virus simply by the USB drivers on the USB, and so eventually they were able to get into the atom, where they were enriching an uranium. I think it was in Iran. I'm not sure, but even those offline computers, they were able to infect those and disturb the process of enriching that uranium correctly. It's completely crazy, but
that was Stuxnet or something like that.
Yeah, Stuxnet. Yeah, STUXnet. So it's a So even with a USB connection, like incumbent wallets use, it's dangerous. And it's the same with NFC, with Bluetooth, with 4G. Basically, the moment you have that online connection, you're opening some kind of avenue where hackers can start trying all their special tricks. So what we've done there is we kept it completely offline. You can compare it with setting up a wall in between our device and your private keys and the online world. A wall, an offline world, one like, let's say, the Game of Thrones wall, but one that doesn't fall in the end of the last season.
That was just bad writing.
Yeah, for sure. So imagine now that you can create on that device your private keys or your seed. So you just click on the side of our hardware wallet, and the screen pops up, it lights up, and you can create your private keys. And from that point on, the only person who's ever seen them is you. And you can sign transactions, receive transactions, whatever you want to do with your wallet without ever even exposing those private keys, those secret cryptographic keys to an online connection. So if you think about it, if you're not sitting in the same room as me, you cannot attack me anymore, which is, of course, incredibly secure. And that's, let's say, the remote attack vector. We remove that completely. And then we have a physical attack vector. So the device, we build it from scratch with one of the world-leading R&D and innovation institutes on nanoelectronics. And so basically, we built this from scratch with our experts to make sure that if somebody gets their hands on this device, on the Zero, and tries to open it up, the device will wipe itself. Your keys will be gone. And then obviously, we have the second plate as a backup to protect you against that. So basically, you have a device that is effectively the most secure in the world to manage your cryptocurrencies.
And the thing that I found really interesting too is the fact that you could generate as many wallets on this device as you want. So in theory, an exchange could use this to generate all of their private keys, and use one device to be able to do that, and then imprint them on those on the steel plates that you were talking about earlier before. And then that way they've got a secure method of generating this that I never touched a computer that was online, which, I mean, that's basically what you have to do. You have to have a solution that's not connected to the internet, because if it's connected to the internet, it's vulnerable.
Yep, exactly. And so we are really applying the most paranoid model you can think of. One of the reasons for that is basically our CTO. He has been in the space, in the crypto space since very early. He was a victim in the Mt. Gox hack. He was a victim in the DAO hack. And he was working on a project called Arcade City and then Swarm City, where they raised 76,000 Ether in an ICO, 2016. And for those who have heard of the Parity hack, it's a famous hack. Their project was impacted the most. So they stole 44,000 Ether from the whole ICO bulk of money they had. But they realized this very quickly in the team. And what they did is they replicated the hack to all the other projects that were protected by the same smart contract. And they hacked all those projects in a white hat hack form. so that they basically could secure and safeguard those projects their money. So they gave it back, obviously, afterwards. That's crucial detail. But for Xavier, so our CTO, that was really one of the reasons why he said, I have to go to security. And every time we are building something, we think of every single detail that can go wrong. We are working for the security side. We are working with 7 professors who are basically world renowned for their expertise in cryptography. If you think about all these cryptographic algorithms that blockchain is based on, AES 256, SHA-2, SHA-3, Ketshak, the way that Bitcoin actually creates private and public keys, it all stems from either completely from their minds 20 years ago to even today. They compete in the NIST competition for the next post-quantum cryptography standards. So we have an amazing back there of these guys, and together with them and the technology player and ourselves, that's how we can actually build the best solution. And maybe one interesting angle, just to give an example of how paranoid we go. In the key creation process, the first thing you do in your device, a lot of things can go wrong. And a simple example is an incumbent hardware wallet. They give you a key. They say, here are your 24 words, write them down on a piece of paper. That's it. But who's to say that they don't have a whole database of every key they ever generated? I don't believe it's a real possibility. Well, it always is. It's super small, but it's something that we don't even want you as a user to worry about. So we basically have taken more or less the same process for generating your private keys, but we add additional inputs like your fingerprints, specific technology such as photon technology, just to make the key better. And we also include one crucial thing that nobody has done before, and which is an interaction step between you and the key. And the easiest you can imagine is that you are allowed to change a couple of the characters in the key, let's say. And by doing that, you know that, okay, even Ngrave, the guys who made the wallet, have no way of knowing what my key can be because they cannot computationally get to it anymore. And obviously, we have taken into account the psychology factor. People are predictable and all of those things to make sure that we still have a strong process. But by doing that, you as a user, even in the first step, know my key has been generated offline. It's statistically unique. Nobody else will ever have the same key. There is no process that can predict what kind of key I have. And I'm the only one who's ever seen it. So I put my Bitcoin on that, try to steal it.
I mean, that's quite the solution. And we were talking about this a little bit before we were recording. I mean, ultimately, if you didn't create something like this, someone else was going to have to, because ultimately for crypto as a market to succeed, we need security solutions to be able to secure, our cryptocurrency. There's not really there's no other path. There has to be a way to secure your private keys. And ultimately, like I said, removing the internet from the equation, removing computers from the equation, removing all the known attack vectors from the equation.
Exactly.
Moving to something as simple as a standalone offline device, and then those two steel plates. That ultimately is a fairly secure solution for this. And I mean, this is going to have implications for a lot of these crypto companies, so that they can figure out hey, we've now got a secure way of doing this, and it's going to enable some innovation for them, because right now I know a lot of these companies have to partner with different partners to try and secure it. I mean, people are literally locking their private keys in bank vaults and taking that kind of older traditional model. And they don't have a tool to be able to do that. They're still just storing their paper wallets. So it's going to be really interesting to see, once your device is on the market, how things start to shift. Is this going to open people up to being able to be more flexible with their exchanges and, offering additional layers of security for their users, and what that looks like. So this adds, adding this extra layer of security adds a lot of potential to the market and allows people to innovate on top of that as well.
Yeah. For example, I met the guys from Swiss Crypto Vault. I don't know if have heard about that company. So what they do is they basically have set up a bunker in the Swiss mountains where they keep private keys for whoever wants to put their keys there. So that's completely crazy, but it's what crypto needs right now. And we also talked before we were podcasting about centralization versus decentralization and the implicit war that's happening between them. Our first solution now is completely decentralized. So I once made a continuum of centralization, decentralization, and then looked at every aspect of what we do. And we're basically now completely decentralized, meaning that if you buy our solution today as a B2C customer, you don't need us anymore. We don't need to exist after that. And you don't have to be afraid that a third party will get access to your keys now or to your plates and so on. And obviously, if do you know Clayton Christensen's books on the innovator's solution, the innovator's dilemma?
I'm aware of them. I haven't read them personally, but yeah I've heard of them.
One of the things he talks about is how you can disrupt the market. And you have these existing solutions that are having already a certain quality, but you have obviously a demand that has some sort of a statistical distribution. And most people at some point, let's say at the time is zero, they want the exact capabilities of that solution. Let's talk about, for instance, smartphones. Your smartphone nowadays, it can do so many things that you don't need anymore. So the distribution of your demand will actually shift towards new layers where you say that is good enough for me. And how disruption typically works is somebody comes with a way cheaper solution, let's say for a super cheap smartphone, but at some point they're innovating themselves and they come on the radar of good enough. And people start buying that because they don't need to buy that expensive thing anymore. And the expensive players, they're actually happy that they don't have to serve the low margin segments anymore. So they just start to they're actually happy to move up in the market to a higher end.
Apple's whole business model, they literally have built their business model so that they don't really serve the lower margin.
Market. So actually, Apple is kind of an anomaly in that model, because normally at some point the premium player will be pushed out of the market because the lower player is good enough for everybody. You know, a smartphone like an Apple, it has all these capabilities. Nobody needs them. You can send a rocket to the moon with the iPhone 2, I think. So Apple hacked that model, and they're still capable of grabbing all the demand. But in other industries, you really see that it's a problem. It's almost perfectly. It's super interesting to see, because they're basically one of the few players that ever was able to just crack that model and don't be bothered by the fact that they're cheap smartphones. The brand appeal is amazing. And why am I saying that? If you look at that full decentralized model we have now, and next to that we have a fully centralized model, the thing is you have people with different demand curves as well. People who want to be completely decentralized, who are super paranoid, they don't want to have anything to do with even the smallest centralized vulnerability. But the reality is that we are now there, and we will probably have to shift a bit towards the centralized version where people say, no, I want you to keep my private key, or at least a backup in case I lose my plate. So that we actually have to move a bit towards the centralized part. And I think a lot of decentralization players today in the markets, if they start from that model, they can actually overcome the centralized partners they have today. Well, it's a complex
so you're saying,
discussion. I'm starting it, but
yeah. So you're basically saying start with the decentralized model first, and then move backwards towards centralized services on top of the decentralized model, as a way to kind of bridge that gap to help, user adoption in certain use cases for different solutions. That's a fascinating approach, because I've told a lot of people in this space, like, we're going to need to start with hybrid solutions. You can't, it's really hard to go 100% decentralized from day one and be able to provide the same level of service that people are used to on a centralized system. So you need that kind of a hybrid. But I definitely see the benefit of, as from a product standpoint, you really want to build that decentralized product first, and then move backwards towards figuring out how can we now create additional layers or services that will then connect in a more centralized fashion, so that you can kind of bridge that gap. Because you're going to probably have customers that are going to be like complete blockchain purists who are going to be like, I don't even want to talk to your company again. Like, we're going to buy your device and you won't even know our name after this, and we'll buy it with crypto so you don't even know who we are. So then you'll have the guy who's like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm happy for you to have, a copy of the private key on, your secure server system as a backup, and I don't have to think about it, and I don't have to worry about putting my plates in, a Swiss, mountains and in a bunker and that kind of thing. So you're going to have eventually probably more people in that camp that's going to grow your user base. But at this end of the day, they're still going to want your device because they want that extra layer of protection that they're not going to get from any of the existing exchanges or any of the existing wallets out there.
No, well, I think like you have a lot of centralized players, and their strategies should be different. And we started from scratch, and we are serving a niche that there is no other player doing this, giving you the full decentralized possibility. If you're a centralized player today, it makes sense to gradually move a bit more towards decentralized. But we wanted to start with the end users' security as the most important goal, taking away every kind of little detail that might jeopardize that, like even us having the possibility of knowing what your key is. that's also what we as users ourselves are looking for. The only place I would ever want to put a significant amount of crypto is on an Ngrave Zero device. Yeah. That's why we build it.
Very cool. Like I said, this needed to exist. This is going to bring legitimacy to the market, and it's going to allow a lot of exchanges to have a more secure solution. We've seen the hacks, we've seen all of the things that have happened. We've seen this battle taking place between decentralized and centralized companies, and the number one thing that the centralized companies point to is security, which is ironic because they're also getting hacked on like a daily basis. I mean, I think Capital One was just hacked recently. I believe it was an AWS employee that got access to their data and stole like a bunch of information.
Which one was that?
That was Capital One.
Yeah.
Yeah, major credit card and financial company and loan provider. Vulnerability is not always necessarily even on the technical side. It's in the human being. It's actually people that are your biggest vulnerability when it comes to any computer system, because at the end of the day, if you can hack the person behind the computer and convince them to do something that isn't in their best interest, you're in their system, and you don't even necessarily have to have remote access to their system, just as long as you got a human being to do the wrong thing to get you access. That is kind of what just happened with Capital One, and that's going to continue happening. So you've removed that from the equation, because now basically someone would have to physically give someone their 2 plates and their keys and say, here's my key. And that is pretty much the only vulnerability that's present, is someone would have to physically give those items up. That's just reality. That's a challenge that, as a tech company, you're never fully going to be able to solve. But, at the end of the day, you've solved for everything else by having an offline solution, so that, that is the only real vulnerability, is the reality that we live in a 3D universe.
Yeah. And I guess like some of the crypto exchange hacks are supposedly like inside jobs. We've also eliminated the possibility of having even an inside job in let's say Ngrave, as we will never know what your key is. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah. I think a couple of things. First of all, we believe that our goal is foster worldwide blockchain adoption, and what we focus on is security, so that people can invest in it and don't have to worry about the fact that tomorrow their investment might just be disappeared. For us, that is really important, and we also believe that is something we're not doing against incumbent hardware wallets and so on. We think we're all in this together. It's a story of challenging each other to become better, talking to each other, be it customers, be it competitors, and so on. So it's a joint effort. It's basically all of us together against malicious hackers, against losing your keys. It's a sort of a revolution, blockchain technology, and we still have to get that community feeding up again, and realize that. And apart from that, I would say, so we will be launching a pre-sales campaign as from September. I think the 9th, might be the 16th. So mid-September, we will be live with our pre-sales. That's where we're gonna get the steepest discounts if you ever want to buy a solution like this. So definitely keep an eye out on that. You can just go to our website, and it's ngrave.io, very simple. You can subscribe now. Today you get a VIP, what's it called? A VIP status for the rest of your life, crypto life. And then, yeah, that's it basically.
Awesome. And where else, is there anywhere else people can find you? So that's ngrave.io and...
Yeah. So the Facebook handle and the Twitter handle and so on is Ngrave official. And mine is just Ruben Merre. So N-E-R-R-E. You can find me anywhere and talk to me wherever you want.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Trent. A pleasure as always.
Thanks for watching another uncensored episode of TechPost.io. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski, and don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that little notification bell next to the subscribe button so that you can get notified when we release new episodes. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, and other social networks, including Twitter and Facebook at TechPost.io. And you can find me personally at Trent Lipinski. Once again, I'm Trent Lipinski, and this has been another great episode of TechPost.io. We'll see you soon.